Suppose we can start now. Welcome everyone to session 4 of our participatory budgeting program. We can go to the next slide, Anna Ruth. So the learning objectives for today are becoming active in participatory budgeting, which is not necessarily what we have in the county, but it's the point of this entire program is that we want to have a budget process that's more participatory. And as we enter into budget season or go deeper into budget season, this is going to become even more important, particularly in a year with so many cuts. And Rachel is going to talk a little bit more, provide context on that later on. But we also want to activate our networks and community in the budgeting process. We want people to be out there talking about their values and how those values should be reflected in the way that we allocate and invest our county's funds. Next slide, please. And so, as you all know, or maybe you don't, my name is Camilo Mejia. I am the Policy and Advocacy Director at Catalyst Miami, and I am one of your facilitators. I've been your facilitator for, I believe, 2 or maybe 3 sessions. And I'll let my co-facilitator and colleague Rachel introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rachel Prestipino. I use she, her pronouns. I'm Catalyst Miami's Vice President of Policy and Community Engagement. I know many of you, and some of you I'm meeting for the first time. I know some of you have been coming to each of these sessions, and maybe for some of you, it might be your first one. So looking forward to our discussion today.
Wonderful. Thank you, Rachel. And for the sake of time, I'm just going to ask for 1 or 2 volunteers as an icebreaker to share 1 or 2 items that you are thinking about advocating for or against come budget hearing time. The rest, if you want, you can put that in the chat. I'll start for myself. I'll say that I'll advocate for $3 million to be allocated to the eviction diversion program to help struggling families stay home, especially when they are coming up against slumlords and unscrupulous landlords. Anybody else? Just shout out 1 or 2 items that you're excited about fighting for through the budget. Anyone? Could be parks, it could be money for community-based organizations, it could be for the arts. Okay, and we're getting some items here. Housing budget cuts, better transit and affordable housing. Wonderful. Okay. We're gonna talk a little bit about what's on the budget for this year. Anybody else? Feel free to put it in the chat. So now we're going to set the tone for collaboration and openness. If we go to the next slide. So basically, as you know, this is a pilot or like a test run for this program. We want to, of course, improve upon it, but we also want to export it. We want it to live and thrive outside of Divest Invest with other organizations that may not be in the habit of doing budget advocacy. We want this to spread like wildfire, and we want everyone in the county to be able to know how to navigate the budget process and have their voices heard, not only at the hearings, but through other spaces that hopefully we will create together. So in order to encourage an environment that's inclusive and that's welcoming for everyone to participate, we start with community agreements. Community agreements are there to ensure that everyone has a chance to participate and that people who tend to have more power, whether it's academic power or financial power, or who are more used to raising their voices, don't take up the whole time. So we have step up, step back, 1 mic, 1 voice, respect all opinions, listen actively. These are things that we are emphasizing on every time that we meet. But I know that for a lot of people, that's very, very common here. But If we're talking about other sectors and other types of organizations, they may not be in the habit of doing that. For instance, faith-based organizations mostly listen to their faith leader. There's not really an environment of communication and participation in the way that we want that environment to exist. Maybe in the school system, labor unions, ad hoc community groups that come together around certain issues. We want to make sure that they know how to create a space where everyone can participate. Does anyone have any suggested community agreement that's not there? Something important that we should add? Go ahead, John.
I didn't know where my hand was. I don't see it, but I'm just, yeah, the only thing I'd like to emphasize, which I think is important, is the idea that this is a trainer's model. I know I said this once before, but to really spread this around for the people who are listening, think about how you would be able to also do this so this can be spread wider than just us. I mean, I think that's an important thing I'd just like to mention.
Absolutely, John. Thank you so much. Anybody else? I've heard a whole bunch. Land the plane, don't yuck my yum. There's a whole bunch out there. Anybody? No? All right. Let's go to the next one. Anna Ruth, please. Okay, what is possible within our current budget system? So, in a moment, we're going to be showing a video, but I'd like to provide some context about what are some of the ways that we can use our voices through the budget process to affect change, right? And it's not necessarily to secure funding. It's not necessarily to save a particular program. It could be also to get the county to divest from something, or because maybe we want the county to not participate in a particular program that's harmful to the community, or to pass a particular policy that could create issues in other areas, right? So the budget hearings can be a real tool for change. And the budget hearings being the main participatory element of the budget process, but there are also other things that we can do through participatory budgeting that can make a huge difference. But in order for that to happen, our budget advocacy has to be part of a larger plan, and must be driven by a community or a group that's organized and that has found and built unity around certain specific issues. Actions at budget hearings are typically part of a larger campaign and effort. And the example that we're going to show briefly, it's basically going to show something that happened that is very relevant to what we're seeing today with local governments basically being forced to participate in the 287G agreement, by which basically local law enforcement gets deputized to do the work of ICE and Homeland Security, basically to go after people who have no papers, and in many cases, people who do have papers, people on asylum uh, proceedings, people with the parole, who are part of the parole program, even people who are legal permanent residents. And so the video that we're about to see is a video that it's basically a testimony from the 2013 budget hearing, when there was a similar program called Secure Communities. And within that program, which basically deputized local law enforcement to detain people if they didn't have their immigration papers in order. And it was basically costing the county $12.6 million to obey, to participate in this program, because the people who were being detained were not eligible to post bail. So that was a source of income that was not available anymore. The federal government only reimbursed the county for 2 days of detention of these individuals, but the average stay was 21 days. The federal government also did not pay for healthcare or treatment if inmates were sick. and the county had to pay for that. And when you add the cost per person in detention who has not committed a crime times thousands of people who were detained through this program, it amounted to a fiscal impact of more than 12 million. And what was happening alongside that was that a lot of basic needs and necessities that were being met through community organizations and um, other agencies out there, like the fire department, the public libraries, some police units, community-based organizations, transit. There were a lot of basic necessities and services and programs that were being cut, while the county was paying $12.6 million to participate in this program. That, by the way, it was basically having a detrimental effect in the relationship between community and police, because people no longer felt safe calling the police to report crimes, because they were afraid that the cops were going to break them apart and take break their families apart on account of not being documented. So what we're going to see is we're going to see one testimony that tries to connect those things, right? That tries to talk about what is happening out there with families being separated and the county paying a lot of money while at the same time cutting services, in education and healthcare and other things, and how we use all those arguments. And if you have time to actually look at the whole thing, which is 5 or 6 hours, but you can watch a few testimonies. You're going to see firefighters, you're going to see people from the public library system, we're going to see people from community-based organizations making very similar arguments. But I think that the way this person brought it all together was very beautiful. She is a member of the community. She's a member of the Miami Workers Center. And this is basically part of, or the result of a strategy meeting that we had, where we decided that we were going to connect the Secure Communities program to the fiscal impact of more than $12 million, the needs that were going unmet, the cuts, and then also the detrimental impact on public safety by destroying the trust between community and the police. So we're going to watch this for 2 minutes, and then we'll watch another video and I'll provide context for that. But I'll try to be briefer next time. Okay, let's hit it.
Okay, let me know if you're able to hear it, okay?
Ravani?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
She needs translation. Do you provide that, or?
Yes, we do. The translators are right here.
Thank you.
Okay. Ellos le van a traducir, por favor. Hable despacio para que él pueda traducir. Thank you.
Okay.
Su nombre y su dirección. Your name and address for the record.
Nelly Medina.
My name is Nelly Medina.
Vivo en Miami, 2100 Northwest, 28 Street, apartamento 1, Miami, Florida, 33142.
I live in 2100 Northwest 28th Street, apartment 1, zip code 33142.
Vengo a pedirles que el condado de Miami-Dade
I would like to ask the Miami-Dade County
no siga apoyando las comunidades seguras
to not continue supporting secure communities.
Yeah.
Oh,
La colaboración entre el condado de Miami-Dade y ICE
The cooperation between Miami-Dade and ICE
está creando serios problemas en las diferentes comunidades
is creating serious problems in different communities,
y el costo es demasiado alto,
and the cost is too high.
dineros que se le podrían dar mejor uso,
Money that could be better spent
mejorando las condiciones de salud, de educación,
improving health conditions and education.
Además, la gran mayoría de los detenidos y deportados a través de comunidades seguras
And also the great majority of those detained and deported through secure communities
son personas que cometieron violaciones menores
are people with minor infractions
o que no cometieron violaciones en absoluto.
or who have not committed any crime at all.
El programa no incrementa la seguridad nacional.
And the program does not increase our national security.
En realidad disminuye la seguridad pública de nuestras comunidades.
And in reality, it diminishes the public security of our communities.
La deportación de los trabajadores,
The deportation of workers,
muchos de ellos padres de familia,
many of whom are fathers or families,
está creando una catástrofe social en nuestras comunidades,
is creating a social catastrophe in our communities,
en las que los niños son los principales victimarios
in which children are the main victims
y las familias están siendo destruidas.
and the families are being destroyed.
Si no velamos por la seguridad del núcleo familiar, que es la familia,
If we don't look after the security of the nucleus of the family, which is the family,
el futuro de nuestros niños está en veremos.
the future of our children is on hold.
Conozco el caso, entre muchos, un matrimonio joven guatemalteco
I know the case amongst many of a young Guatemalan couple
trabajaban recogiendo productos que nosotros consumimos
who would work picking up products that we consume,
deportaron al padre,
and they deported the father.
tienen 2 hijos ciudadanos americanos,
They have 2 children who are American citizens,
uno de 8 meses,
one who's 8 months,
el otro de 2 semanas.
and the other is 2 weeks.
Están solos, la madre también fue tomada prisionera,
They are alone because the mother was also taken prisoner,
los niños quedaron abandonados
and the children were left abandoned.
y está con orden de deportación.
And it's with a deportation order.
¿Qué vamos a hacer?
What are we going to do?
¿Continuar con ICE?
Con-
¿Apoyándolo?
continue-
¿Gastando millones cuando se pueden utilizar en otras cosas como es la seguridad de las comunidades y de la familia?
Continue with ICE spending millions when it could be spent on other things like the safety and security of the family?
Les dejo esta inquietud. Gracias a todos.
Well, and I leave this question for you, and thanks to all.
Thank you very much to all of you. Muchas gracias a todos. Thank you very much. And now we welcome Clarissa Vega.
Was
Okay,
that
thank
it?
you.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. So I want to take some comments and thoughts on this, but before that, I just want to point out that in this particular case, we were not asking for a particular budget item. We went to the budget as part of a larger strategy, which was to get the county to stop participating in secure communities, which is the modern day equivalent of 287G agreements. We were not asking the county to invest in any pro-immigration program. We're not asking the county to invest in housing or anything else. We're not asking for any money. We were simply saying, don't cut all these vital services and programs. Here is the solution. Do not participate in secure communities, which is hurting public safety. And that way you'll be able to save all these services, right? And so that we use the budget here as a tool and a strategy to go after something that was not related to a budget item. So it's just like to get us thinking about different ways in which we can use the budget process, to affect social change, not necessarily connected to money. But are there any questions or comments, thoughts, reflections? Yes, go ahead, John.
Yes, we used to go to these budget hearings regularly to ask for participatory budgeting. And so that was another example of not going there trying to talk about a budget item, but to actually try to advocate for a policy, that maybe this could happen. The only other thought I have is when I'm looking at that meeting, compared to town hall meetings that I went to just recently, it, to me, the meetings, and this is what I'm really concerned about, they seem to be becoming much more controlled. So that's something it's just struck me immediately there.
Thank you, John. Anybody else? Comments, thoughts, questions? No?
It feels
Uh,
like we're having the same fight again.
Absolutely. Yes. Very similar. Very similar. They're merging cultural arts with public libraries. They're cutting out director positions, which basically means getting rid of the leadership, which has a detrimental impact in those programs. They're increasing public transit fares. And then at the same time, they're, participating in 287G and, dumping $1 billion into the police budget. So yeah, very, very similar times. And then also they're separating families. And you saw how she talked about children being the main victims of this collaboration between the local government and ICE. So yeah, lots of similarities. Anybody else? Okay, fast forward to the year 2014, is it, Rachel? Yeah, 2014 or 2015? No, 2015.
2015, yeah.
Okay, 2015. So 2014 is when the huge climate action rallies and marches took place in cities like New York and San Francisco and whatnot. Miami didn't participate. So the following year, we started, organizing a march and rally, having realized that we are ground zero for the impact of climate change and sea level rise. So we organized a coalition of local organizations that included some big green organizations, other, frontline community organizations, Catalyst Miami, Miami Workers Center, FAM, Florida Rising, which was called Florida New Majority at the time, CLEO, a whole number of community organizations basically came together to demand climate action through direct action, through marches and rallies, that featured a lot of speakers, arts and cultural programming and things like that, all to put pressure on Mayor Jimenez to take action on climate. In the entire budget document, there wasn't a single mention of sea level rise or climate change. We're like completely oblivious to the impact that sea level rise could have, despite the fact that we are the city that has the most assets, human and infrastructure, exposed to sea level rise and climate change, plus storms, erosion, things like that. And there was no action. So we organized a very successful rally and march. And then we realized this was like right around budget season that it was not enough for us to just have a rally and a march, while at the same time the local elected leadership was not basically taking any action on climate change and sea level rise through the budget. And so we took the energy from the organizing of the march and the rally into the budget hearings and started to demand action on climate change through the budget. And what we're going to hear right now is a young high school student who was organized by one of the organizations that was part of the organizing of the march and the rally, which is basically the CLEO Institute. The CLEO Institute had trained a whole lot of high school students to come to the budget hearing and demand budget action. And this all came out of the organizing of that rally and march. And then because of we were able to leverage and redirect all that energy into the budget, we were able to get the Office of Resilience and to get the first Chief Resilience Officer. And later we learned that when you organize, when a particular office or program is born out of people taking action, that particular program is going to work very well and very closely with community, as we have worked with the Office of Resilience throughout the years, more than 10 years now. But let's watch the video now.
Please state your name and address.
Hello, my name is Miranda Pachera. I'm a senior.
Are you speaking as a group, or all of you want to
Individually.
speak? Individually?
Yes.
Okay, you have 2 minutes.
Hello.
State your name and address for the record.
Okay, my name is Miranda Pachera. I'm a senior at Coral Reef High, and I live in Coral Gables, 1251 Alhambra Circle, and I belong to District 6, Commissioner Rebecca Sosa. I am speaking today to demand immediate action on climate change, specifically the rise in sea level. I am here seeking answers to our recommendations. On August 20th, 2015, the mayor responded to a list of sea level rise task force recommendations sent to him 7 months prior. The first recommendation addressed the feasibility of designating adaptation action areas, as recommended in the Comprehensive Development Master Plan. Adaptation action areas serve to build an infrastructure on the buildings threatened by sea level rise, adapting them to the upcoming rise. His brief, uninterested response served only to coddle our voices into silence. The mayor's response read as follows. Preliminary meetings with technical staff have been held to establish criteria to be used in the modeling scenarios that will support and help determine the adaptation action area designation process. Additional staff working groups will be formed as necessary to develop appropriate adaptation strategies and guide outreach efforts to key stakeholders. After 8 months, the administration is pondering the designation process and advising that more working groups will be formed as necessary to develop strategies. So effectively, nothing is happening. When is this administration going to take this threat seriously? Adaptation action areas should have been implemented when the recommendations were first shown in January of 2015. There's no reason for putting this off this extended amount of time. There's no reason for having preliminary meetings and no need for pondering any longer. Born and raised in Miami, Florida, as a toddler I can remember having longer beaches to play on. In my short life, I have already experienced the effects of climate change and sea level rise. I refuse to watch my children be stripped of what makes the city so beautiful. Thank you, Mayor, for what you have rewarded us, but I fear it is not enough. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so very much. For the other speakers, if you're high school children and under
All right.
18,
Thank you, Anna Ruth. All right, so I want you to remember this and the previous testimonies, because we're going to go through the anatomy and the different parts of an effective 2-minute public comment. But yeah, I want to open it now to thoughts, reflections, questions, ideas, any reactions to what this young woman had to say. Anyone? But not all at once, please.
I mean, clearly, I mean, she was very forceful, and organized, and knew what she was talking about, and it was really impressive, I thought. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. You can thank Caroline for that. Caroline Lewis.
She called them out nicely, where she like complimented them, but then said it wasn't enough. So I like that too.
Nicely, but with a lot of attitude.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then also to provide a little bit more context, this is something very typical that politicians will do. You present them with a crisis and they'll say something like, okay, let's approve a feasibility study. Let's create a process to designate high impact areas. Let's create a process to find a board or select, experts and things like that. So there was a lot of that going around by politicians, around that time. And, we see a lot of the same, today about many of the issues that are of great importance. And so she was actually well prepared because she was working with Clio, and Clio did their own budget analysis and, looked into the policies that were being implemented. And so she had a lot of ammunition, going into the hearing, and she had a lot of help. But that's how it should be. And that's what Divest Invest does. We do that type of analysis. We create talking points and we help people with their 2-minute public comment, which we're going to do today. But yeah, any more thoughts, questions, ideas?
Well, I'm thinking about when we talked about spaces. Remember those discussions? I think it was number 2, session 2, and we talked about creating spaces and where you're being invited into a space, but then you want to create your own space. And I thought she did a real good job creating a space for other people that would want to follow up and talk about that. She's really, in a sense, trying to claim this, and really sort of confronting these people, which I thought, the authorities, which was interesting thing. Again, I made this comment earlier about these meetings getting more controlled. I'm just wondering if this can happen now. I mean, that's what I'm sort of worried about.
Thank you, John. Yeah, definitely. Being at that hearing myself, it was very inspiring to hear, young high school students speak with so much knowledge and passion. Anybody else, perhaps somebody who hasn't spoken yet, have any comments or questions or ideas, thoughts, reflections? Do you think that she was effective? Thumbs up, thumbs down? Anyone? Maybe not. All right. I want to hand it over to Rachel now for the next slide.
Okay, hi everybody. So, who here has been following anything related to this year's budget? Camilo just gave some awesome examples of what's been possible in terms of budget advocacy. And to do that, we thought back through some things that we've, collectively witnessed where the budget hearings were excellent tools for advocacy. And, he just showed some examples from a number of years ago. And there have been many more since. But who's been paying attention to what's been happening with this year's budget? If you can give me some kind of emoji reaction, thumbs up, something, if you've paid any attention to this year's budget so far. Okay. All right, a couple of us. Okay, so tell me then, I see trying my best to do sessions and engage Miami's work from Rochelle. I saw Bernice had a thumb up. Okay, so tell me then, either maybe Rochelle or Bernice, since you've been paying attention this year, what do you know about the budget this year? What's the current state of affairs? People are calling it a budget crisis. So what do you know about what's happening so far? And it's okay if it's not a lot. That's what we're here to talk about. But what do you already understand about the budget?
So I understand, like you mentioned, we're in a deficit. Some departments are being proposed to be merged, like the Department of, I think it was Cultural Affairs and the library. Some fares for transit might go up by 50 cents, I think it was. I know that there's just some town halls last week and the week before, and that the first budget hearing is the 4th of September, I think.
That's right. Okay, so you know a lot already. That's awesome. Was anybody here able to attend any of the budget town halls? There were 6 all across the county that the mayor hosted.
Yeah, I attended the first one at the main library.
Okay, great. What about you, Bernice? I saw you coming off mute.
Yeah, I also went to that first one, and definitely it was, John, like what you're saying, like controlled, right? They chose how many people would like speak, and they give sticky notes to, I think it was like 60 people or something. And if you didn't get one, like all of JVP sitting together talking about divesting from the Israeli bonds, they didn't, there were like 1 or 2 and moving on. But yeah, like what stuck to me was how many groups, like how many people spoke about like, oh, like Lotus House, this women's shelter, this or this. Stuff I've never heard about. Some small farming company, like a lot of people saying like, you're gonna put us out of business. You're getting rid of like a lot of social help. And
yeah.
So like more than even like I was aware of.
Right. So you're noticing a lot of community-based organizations showing up to talk about the impacts the cuts were going to have on them. Okay.
Yeah.
And I see Bridget saying in the chat, I caught a little bit last week at the church with my kids at a church in Liberty City. Okay. Paulette attended the North Dade Regional Library Town Hall. I was at that one. Okay. I also was at Arcola Lakes. Okay, great. So everyone here almost has learned something. So during those town halls, Mayor Levine Cava started all of them with a presentation on like why we are here. I'm curious if y'all, those of you who listened to her presentation, and I think we're gonna probably add a few things that maybe she's not mentioning in her presentation. But for those of you who listened to it, she kind of gave like an explainer on some of the economic forces that brought us into this budget, to this budget deficit. We're in a $400 million deficit. So can anyone shout out some of the more economic reasons why we are facing a deficit at this time that you remember?
Not raising the millage on properties, right? The
Mhm.
property tax.
Yep. The last 2 years, it actually was cut and went down. Not only did we not raise it, we lowered it. Mercedes says federal cuts. I saw Paulette came off mute.
Yeah, well, I was going to say state and federal.
Yes. Yep. State and federal. Shubnam says ARPA funds, I think is what you mean. Yep. That's the American Rescue Plan Act, right? Yeah. Camilo says changes to tax law in favor of the rich and businesses. Yep. These are all good examples of how we ended up where we are. And constitutional offices. Yep, exactly. So many of you know that we voted as a county. All the voters decided that we would have these independent offices that used to be all under Miami-Dade County's administration. So now we have, instead of a police director that reports to the mayor, we have a sheriff that has its own constitutional office. And instead of the clerk of courts being part of the her administration, it's now a separate clerk and comptroller office. Same thing with supervisor of elections is now its own office, and these are all elected officials now that have their own budgets that they govern. But it's all coming from the same money, right? All the same revenue sources as before in the budget, except now instead of the commissioners approving it and then the mayor getting to execute the spending of that budget, she now has to prepare an amount of money that will kind of go to these offices, and then it's fully in their control at that point. Once the money goes to the sheriff's office, once the commission approves that, that's the sheriff's budget now to spend, and so forth for all the constitutional offices. So it's kind of like taking the same pot, dividing it 6 ways in a way that we weren't before. And then, yes, all the other reasons that you all mentioned. Bernice brings up the millage rate. That's something that I'll say, at least from my perspective, and I'm sure there's other people that will agree with me, that was a politically easy thing to do when we were in a better budget year. Someone like Danielle Levine Cava would benefit in any future office she wishes to hold, or in reelection to this office, which she just ran, from being able to say, hey, I actually cut your taxes. It's like everyone wants to have their cake and eat it too. We want to have all the services and we don't want to pay for them, right? And so in a time where we were feeling flush with cash because we had all these federal and state funds, mostly federal funds from the Biden administration, that felt like the right time to make a short-term politically advantageous decision to, cut the millage rate. And now there's also a lot of people who would make the claim that that was the decision that she was making because people are suffering, and that was a way to help people save money, right? Through the millage rate. So, I'm not saying it doesn't benefit people to do that, but that is part of the reason that we're now in a major deficit, because we could forecast that this was coming, right? In cutting the millage rate, we knew that the funds that we knew the constitutional offices were about to hit. We voted on that years ago. We knew that federal funding had the potential to shift drastically after this most recent election. So sometimes these short-term decisions don't always have a smart economic future. So, and then there's also things like inflation. We're still struggling with rising costs, corporate price gouging. I mean, I think in the same way, how many of you would say that you spend a lot more on basic goods and services now than you did 2 or 3 years ago in your own household, right? So it's the same thing with the county. They're definitely every time the county needs to purchase something, it costs more, right? So that's real, and current tariff policy is only going to exacerbate that. So these are, yeah, spending more money on everything. Yes, absolutely. Bridget. So, and I see your point about federal discretionary funds to replace those monies lost. Yeah, I mean, we can't really count on that right now. Unfortunately, we're kind of getting the opposite of cash flow from the federal government at this point. But yes, so on top of all these economic forces that led to this deficit, which you've heard the mayor comment on, there's also ideological and political forces that are influencing how this deficit is being handled. Right. So we're in kind of a period now. Who here has heard the phrase Doge? Okay. I see.
Everybody.
Everybody. Yep. Okay. So somebody tell me what it is. What's Doge?
Department of Governmental Efficiency, something like
Yep.
that.
Exactly. That's what the acronym means. What is it? Paulette, you came off mute.
As far as I'm concerned, it's just a way of, going through the departments. It's an auditing system, I think. And they're determining where there is waste and where they can see efficiencies.
Yeah, I mean that was the original that is the way it was being described, right? And of course, actually there have been other sort of government efficiency reviews, audits and efforts in the federal government and other administrations. I see in the chat we said Elon. Yes, this time around this was part of sort of a Trump administration right-wing effort to point out what they refer to as waste, fraud, and abuse in the federal government. And what that really became was an opportunity for an outside, not unelected, unaccountable businessman, billionaire, like one of the richest people on earth, to decide what he was going to cut, from the federal government, sparing his own contracts that he received that personally benefit him to the tune of hundreds of millions, if not more, of dollars from the federal government. So that we all watched that play out in the news. We watched the love affair start to dwindle, and now Elon Musk's influence is perhaps waning on our federal government. We all saw this play out over the last few months, but it's actually beyond just a couple of news cycles. It's sort of a full ideological push to kind of use this the boogeyman of waste, fraud, and abuse to make cuts to essential services that our government, at least that we believe that our government should provide. And all of Trump's followers all the way down seem to be wanting to enact that at all levels of government. So while it was a federal government thing, there's also now a state version. And the impacts are happening here locally because the state version of Doge has, announced that they're going to come look specifically into Miami-Dade County. And our current, chair of the county commission, Rodriguez, wrote a letter basically welcoming them in, saying, come on in. We appreciate your help making our government more efficient. The mayor responded with a letter that basically said, hey, state government, we actually really don't need you all in our budget. We've already made a lot of cuts. We have a balanced budget. We're making tough decisions on efficiency already. And, we don't need any kind of ideological influence from the state government and how we're being governed locally. So there's already all these dynamics playing out where, the mayor is already making these cuts, but there's potential that the commissioners might be hungry for more to prove that they can Doge harder than anybody else, right? This is sort of the ideological forces, and that there's not a lot of love lost sometimes between the mayor and the commissioners. And as I'm sure many of you know, because you've been so active, the mayor proposes the budget, but the commissioners are the ones who, in the end, have to approve it. And they might be fiending for even more cuts. There are, of course, some that, like Commissioner McGee, for instance, recently hosted a public meeting about all the cuts to community-based organizations that provide these essential services, and trying to make his stance against these cuts. And he's one of the only commissioners who has spoken out about some of the other, what we might refer to as wasteful spending in the budget, which is giving a lot of money to the FIFA Soccer World Cup, which I think is, what is it, $40 million, Milo, in the budget?
46.
46 million dollars is in the budget for the FIFA World Cup, which big sporting events like that, typically the logic around it is that, oh, it brings so much tourism and commerce to the city, it's worth the investment. But we also know that there are times where actually FIFA's had a pretty bad track record and has not produced the same return on investment of public dollars as people often, as municipalities often think that it will. And beyond whether or not it produces a return on investment, if it's not, this whole series has been about participatory budgeting. So really the question is this where the people would want their resources spent? Would we decide, if it were up to us, to put $46 million towards a sporting event while we're increasing, fares on transit to 50%, or sorry, by 50 cents? Would we decide to spend $46 million on FIFA while we're cutting, pretty much every community-based organization's social service that they offer? And by the way, while we're on that subject of the CBOs, I think it's important I need my bus, not FIFA, exactly. I think it's important to note that all these community-based organizations that offer these services, sometimes the way the commissioners talk about them is as though they're optional. They're like superfluous. There was even, I don't know, I forget who said that they were at the North Dade Regional.
I did.
Paulette. Okay, great. So Paulette, you were there. You might have heard the commissioner for that area, Commissioner Gilbert.
Right.
He kind of
Oliver Gilbert.
Yes.
He says, they're financing short-term, long-term with short-term and unconventional financing at that.
Yeah, exactly. He was kind of making his case about why community-based organizations shouldn't count on Miami-Dade County for resources. That basically
Correct.
You're trying to sustain these programs long term, but you're trying to do that with money that's non-renewable, as he would call it. Now,
correct.
Yeah, now or not recurring. Now, I would counter that with saying, and I'll see what you all think about this, but the county abdicates a lot of its responsibility through these organizations, right? We pay taxes so that we can have these kinds of services, and in many cases, in lieu of the county offering them, they are outsourced to these other organizations, right? Instead of dealing with our homelessness crisis, we give money to Camilla's House and Christie House and other organizations to deal with it. And I'm not saying that there aren't some county offices that are working on the homeless trust, that are partners with them, etc. But they aren't superfluous. It's instead of the county offering the service, they are outsourcing an essential service, oftentimes to other organizations, youth programs, right? There are some places in the world and some governments where the government itself would provide all these things, right? But here in America and in Miami-Dade County in specific, we prefer sometimes to put this onus, instead of on government, on nonprofit organizations. And so to say that, the community organizations shouldn't be reliant on that funding is to say, well, then are you going to pick up that mantle instead, right? Is local government going to start meeting these social services needs? Because I think the answer is no. What's gonna happen is just more people are going to fall through the cracks. So I don't know if y'all have any thoughts on that? Any particular organizations that you are close to that where there's going to be some concerning cuts that you want to mention?
I'll say something about sports if it's okay. I mean,
Sure.
there's in terms of this area of sociology, the sociology of sport, there's tons of studies that show when cities are actually asked to support these big sporting venues, they vote it down when they're asked, because they don't have a role in it. And on top of that, there's a huge controversy about who really benefits from those. And again, in more reason, like, do jobs come to local people? Mostly no, lower jobs instead of the higher jobs. So there's tons of research that shows that that's a bad investment for towns. I mean, you really have to figure out where this money's going, you know.
Right. And Miami has a bad track record with these things. I mean, in this case, we're not talking about building a whole new stadium, but everyone remembers Marlins Stadium, that debacle of a deal, right? We don't have a good track record here with investing in sports that are supposed to bring us so much economic return. Yes.
Rachel, I have one other point I wanted to ask as well. I thought I heard them say that it was from a previous year that this FIFA was supposed to, the decision was made in a previous year, and they actually had to follow through with it here, or was I mistaken?
Well, the commissioners did make the deal, but I don't think that it means it's undoable.
Okay.
Camilo has a hand up. Were you commenting on this?
No, I had a different comment, but you're right. Yeah, they can rescind their decision completely.
Yeah.
It was a pledge that they made that they can change, you know, they can pledge less money, they can take it all back, they can ask for assurances. They have a lot of power regarding the 46 million.
Negotiating power, because they've made
Yeah.
this decision without really asking for anything from FIFA in return.
Right.
No community agreements of any kind, and they could change that. But sorry, what was the other comment you were going to make, Camilo?
So at this town hall with Commissioner McGee, the Christie House shared the story of a young woman who was raped, and she was too afraid to testify. And had it not been for the intervention program that they offered, which included therapy and other kinds of support that they provided the young woman with, she would have not testified, and the perpetrator would not have been apprehended and would not have been incarcerated. And that goes to show that public safety is not simply about more money going into the police department and having more cops in the streets, because cops by themselves are not able to provide the type of intervention that that young woman needed, the type of support for her own psychological and emotional well-being, but also to ensure that the perpetrator was caught. And yet, you know, they're talking about public safety as if it's only a measure of how many police officers we have in the streets. And I think that we should challenge that. We should challenge that narrative going into the budget hearings. One last thing I'll say, at Catalyst Miami, we provide direct service provision through our prosperity campaign. And that includes helping people do their taxes, right? Like file their taxes, including people who don't have papers, but they have an EIN and they use that to pay taxes. And we recruit volunteers to do that through the VITA program. And so we, you know, like there are like exponential growth. The impact is much bigger than the money that we receive, right? The impact is much bigger when it comes to public safety and the well-being of that young woman, but also in terms of like the county being able to collect more money through the tax base, not only through the money that they're giving us and, you know, our tax preparers, but also the people who come to us as volunteers. So the ripple effects, right? Like, and the incremental benefit of investing into the CBOs should be noted. You know, it should be an argument. It should be a talking point at the hearing. But that's just like, you know, a thought that came to mind.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a big picture way of thinking about this. Some of you already pointed out like where some of these major cuts are coming from, right? There's a lot of departments that have been merged, right? You mentioned the department, I think it was Rochelle that mentioned the Department of Cultural Affairs merging with the library system, and then they're eliminating some leadership positions. Within the climate, right? There used to be a chief bay officer, chief heat officer, chief resilience officer. Now it's all under one department. They're scaling all these things down, and that leads to things like instead of doing as many like extreme heat preparedness workshops, they're going to do more of a train the trainer, and then responsibilities on community members to tell each other, you know, right? And There's already the 50-cent increase on transit and the elimination of Metro Connect, which a lot of people, of course, rely on. I know for those of you who went to the town halls, a lot of people have been speaking on that. But all this is happening in the shadow of over $1 billion going to the sheriff's office, right? So, and to Camilo's larger point about public safety being more than just about the number of officers on the street, how does it make sense to give $1 billion to the sheriff's office while you cut gun violence intervention programs or any kind of anti-violence initiatives that focus on intervening in young adults' lives who are caught up in cycles of violence, right? That's the some elements of the peace and prosperity plan were cut, and how do you do that and when you're also cutting things that impact like families' food security that can lead to the kind of like desperate social circumstances that drive people to violence, right? So this is we've talked about, I'm sure, in previous sessions, but Catalyst has been part of the Divest Invest Coalition for a while. That formed in 2020 as a result of our kind of national reckoning about policing in this country and all the funding that we put towards these hyper militarized police departments that have military level tanks and crowd control mechanisms that they spend absurd amounts of money on instead of the social services that make us safer. And so since 2020, we've been a part of this coalition, and you all who have not yet attended are invited to attend. That's a way for you to continue on in this work. After these sessions, after the budget hearings end, like how do we continue to build on this in a long-term way? That Divest Invest Coalition would be part of that. We meet more frequently during times like this when their budget hearings are happening, but we do meet regularly throughout the year. So you'll get follow-up information about that. But thinking from that lens of divesting, from the things that we're overspending on in terms of our policing, like over militarizing our police department, and investing instead in our communities. This budget is really the opposite of that. And by the way, the commissioners could choose to give the sheriff even more. The sheriff is acting, even though our perspective is that it's already an insane amount of money while these cuts are being made. The sheriff's basically saying that the mayor is not doing enough in this budget. The sheriff's asking for, is it 50 million more dollars? And the commissioners will have to decide whether or not to grant that. So just that message of, hey, no more.
55.
Thank you. 55 million. Yeah. So that's a message also to carry at the budget hearings that, hey, just no more. We just don't need more while we're making these other cuts. So I'm going to drop in the chat. This is a working document that could change, but this is a document that Camilo created that we've been using in our Divest Invest Coalition. That's kind of just a summary by department, or I guess it's more than just department, but by area within the budget and the different buckets of housing, economic development, transit, cultural affairs. It's just a summary of some of the cuts and then some talking points, like what we're talking through tonight. So, that there's over $1 billion for law enforcement amid $15 million cuts to community programs that are needed for public safety. Like that's one example. Eliminating Metro Connect removes vital on-demand transit services that limits access for vulnerable communities and reduces equity. These are just some examples, and it'll give you in each area the change in terms of dollars and percentage change from the previous year's budget to this year's budget. So it's just a useful document to help you do your own research and prepare as the budget hearings are coming up. Okay, so all that about this year's budget. Why don't we go now to starting to talk about how to prepare for these budget hearings. The first one's coming up on September 4th. Do me a favor and give me an emoji react or something if you've ever spoken at a budget hearing in the past.
Not for the county, but for the school board.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Rochelle has for the school board. Shabnam has. Camilo has. I know Mercedes has. Okay, Paulette's leaving for it. Well, thank you, Paulette. We'll follow up with some materials that can help you prepare for the budget hearings. Thanks for being here. Okay, so a few of us have. So for those who haven't, I'm just going to give a little overview of kind of what these budget hearings are like. But I guess first, anybody, you can already see what I have listed on the screen, but anybody who's been want to describe maybe how you felt about being at the meeting, what the meeting felt like.
Honestly, yes. It felt like we were forcing them to listen to us. And there were times when they were actively not listening to us. So just keep that in mind and try to ignore that if you can, because it can bring down your morale a bit. Yeah.
So would you say that you felt ignored?
Yes, very much so. And that was with me, representing an organization that's known in the community, the League of Women Voters, that still didn't get really anyone's attention. So I could only imagine what, someone who's not even representing an organ is just standing up as a member of the community to speak on behalf of all of their community members. How would they feel? And it just, it makes you a little sad. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. You should still do it.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for sharing that. Anybody else want to share how the meeting felt? Get there early to get a seat and hear what's going on. Yeah. Milo said it's felt like a circus. Yeah. So these meetings, let's just say they're not set up to be their most participatory. We already know that, right? We've talked through, John went over the ladder of engagement last time about kind of the different levels of where starting with just kind of no engagement at all, moving to we inform people but don't receive any feedback, or receive feedback but it's token, it's a kind of, and then the higher up you go, the more decision making power community is able to have, right? The budget hearings are not super high up on that on that ladder, right? I see it being described in the chat as adversarial sometimes. Yep, adversarial for sure. I wasn't expecting that energy at my first hearing. Yeah. So, just preparing that. The way the format works is usually the mayor presents the budget to the commissioners for their approval. There's some kind of opening remarks that take up, maybe 30, 45 minutes as they settle in, they hear the remarks, they, call a roll, all the things like that. And then usually they move right into public comments, and community members are given at most 2 minutes. Sometimes they'll cut it down to 1, and that's totally at the chair's discretion. It's quite arbitrary, and it doesn't really matter if you prepared for 2 minutes. No, you've only got 1, right? And those comments, because people often get there super early, while the hearing may not start until, I think it's usually 5:30, sometimes people will be there hours before to try to get an early number. The earlier you are, the earlier number you get, so that you can get out of there, because these things can often go late into the night. So people have to deal with things like childcare, not being able to get dinner, not being able to get off work in time to get there to get an early enough number. There's a lot of strain for people to be involved. The commissioners, after everyone speaks, they deliberate, they make their case for their own personal changes. They usually come in, some of them are listening and might pick up on what community members are saying, but usually they come in knowing already what they're going to ask for out of this budget. And when that first budget hearing ends, then the real kind of wheeling and dealing begins it's already begun, but then they're really pushing the mayor to make changes. And so she would issue a memo between the first and second budget hearing, a change memo outlining, okay, these are the changes that I'm making in response to community voices or in response to direct asks from the commissioners that are basically saying, hey, if you don't include this or cut this, we won't vote to approve it. And so usually by the end of the second budget hearing, which is a couple of weeks after the first, commissioners usually approve the budget. I've personally not seen a budget hearing where on this end of the second night they didn't approve it. And the reason being, it's pretty much in their interest to get it done, because the new budget takes effect on October 1st, and it would just delay a lot of government processes and make their lives quite difficult. So they're usually quite incentivized to come to some consensus by the end of the second hearing. So for this reason, the first budget hearing is usually the one that has the better turnout because people kind of know that by the time you get to the second one, that end of, the end of the night comes and they're approving the budget with whatever's in it. So people often really focus on the first hearing because they're trying to make it in that change memo, like whatever is going to change between 1 and 2. But as Camilo spoke about when he gave the earlier examples, sometimes turning up to the budget hearings is part of a larger campaign where people are coming together and unifying their voices and their talking points, trying to get media attention, taking advantage of the opportunity to speak to all the commissioners at once. And it's not always about just that one night, right? It's usually there are a lot of things that community organizations have been working behind the scenes leading up to it and will continue working on afterwards. But yes, okay, so that's a little overview. Let's go to the next slide. So we're going to send all the links. I won't spend a lot of time on this. Sounds like all of y'all have been following along because you knew about the town halls. So these are some links where you can get some information on how to attend the budget hearings or at least watch them if you can't make it. So we'll go to the next one. Logistics, right? So we spoke already about how they don't really make these easy to attend, right? And so that's why we recommend making a transportation plan. If you wait till the day of, you might find yourself realizing this is harder than I thought, and never mind, right? But I know there's some folks here who are like experts on public transit, who ride it all the time or have to deal with mobility issues of their own and things like that. So does anybody want to give an example of your transportation plan of how you're planning to get to Government Center for the budget hearings?
Metro Rail.
Okay.
Yeah, Metro Rail. Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? There's a Metro Rail stop at Government Center, so that's convenient. Anybody else? Bus and mover. Okay. And if you are needing to drive, they usually have the parking garages, or they will have the parking garages free during that time. Mixed mode, transit, and freebie, Metro Connect. Yeah, well, while Metro Connect exists, see, here's someone who relies on it. You should be taking full advantage. Okay, great. So I'm glad we're all thinking about how we're getting there. Bring a valid photo ID. You definitely don't want to get all the way there and then realize that you're going to get turned away at security because you didn't get the valid photo ID. So usually check in, you sign in, get a pass, and then there's usually a different table where they have you fill out your speaker's card. And your speaker's card would be the thing that gives you your number, right? The people who are filling out that first speaker card, you're going to get called first, right? So then you have to go through security. It's kind of like TSA at the airport. Like they're going to have you put your bags through a metal detector, things like that. And yeah, the meeting usually starts as at 5 or 5:30. I can't recall or this one's at 5. I think 5:01. It's just like precisely. But I would imagine people will be lining up, especially for this year, because this budget is so contentious. I bet people will be there at like 11 a.m. To be honest. I mean, I'm not saying you will be, but there will be people, especially people who are professionally advocates, like maybe they're representing an organization they work for, and so they have the time, right? Their whole day is about the budget hearing. There will be people there early. I mean, I have seen it before. I would say for normal folks who might, who are trying to get there after work and things like that, maybe just plan to try to get there an hour early if you can, to get a good seat, maybe get an early speaker card, etc. So if you can be there by 4 p.m., that would be awesome.
Rachel, can I add, also, I think you're not allowed to sign up to like speak until an hour or an hour and a half before the actual hearing. So either way,
Right.
you get there at 11 a.m., you're just going to be waiting around.
And people do. But it's
And they
true.
won't
They
let
won't
you go
sign up.
inside either. Sorry. They won't let you go inside until it's like very close to the time that the hearing will start.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, people will start queuing the line at an absurd time, but they won't actually let you start filling out the speaker's card till closer to it. Okay, and so on the next slide here, inside the chamber, sounds like many of you have been in the chamber before, but here's a photo of what it looks like for anybody who's not aware. You can find a seat anywhere. It's not assigned. Oh, I got some tips in the chat about IDs. Anything with a picture ID works. Yes. Yes. You should be allowed to register online to speak. Unless that's a new feature, I do not believe that they're going to allow online registration. They never have for the budget hearings, unless I missed some sort of announcement that they've created some sort of online registration, which would be awesome. That they are not doing it that way.
You can
So,
send your testimony to your commissioner, and I'm not sure you can send. Well, I guess you can send to a mayor, but to speak, you have to sign up at the table.
yeah, that's right. Unfortunately, there is no online sign up ahead of time. Yeah, here I see Andrew saying sometimes they don't ask for ID, sometimes they do. Very true. And honestly, I can never predict when. I think they just get overwhelmed sometimes and start saying never mind to the IDs, sending people in. Just a wishful suggestion. Oh, yes, we should be allowed. I see now. You said we should be allowed to register online. I wish. You're right. Okay, so yeah, once you're inside, remember to have your electronics off. Makes the experience more pleasant for everyone. If the ringer's off. They call out the names from the speaker cards in order. They usually call a few at a time. So you can kind of go up to the podiums and be ready to go, and they alternate between podiums. So the idea is it goes from one speaker to the next as smoothly as possible. You want to have your remarks ready. I would say, you can prepare 2 minutes, but be ready that you might get cut to one. So I would recommend timing yourself beforehand to get a sense. I mean, because that time can go by really fast if you're not preparing for that short window. And try to be as relaxed as possible. I think some of the most compelling speakers often seem like they're addressing the commission directly, instead of like being absorbed in their notes. So you are often the ones that they're listening to hours and hours of testimony. And as Shabnan said, sometimes it seems like they're not listening at all. Some of them will try very hard to listen. Others don't make it seem like they're trying very hard. But even the ones who are trying hard to listen, they still have to listen to people back to back to back for hours, right? So trying to speak in a relaxed conversational tone instead of like you're reading notes will just make it easier for them to hear you. Also prepare an alternative statement. So several people have already spoken on your point. You don't have another option to speak on. Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you. There will be repetition at these hearings. Some repetition is good, right? The example of that high school student, she was one of tens or maybe more of people who spoke on needing more investments in climate in the budget, but everyone's speaking on it in their own way, right? Putting their own personal experience with it, but hitting some of the same points. So yes, I see Mercedes saying your remarks should begin with what your demands are and why, and also make your remarks personal. Is it absolutely necessary to state our address orally when we speak? I have privacy concerns about that. That is a great question. So if you're under the age of 18, no. Actually, in that video, I wanted to remark on that. Right after it ended, Monestine realized she was under 18 and then made a statement like, hey, if you're under 18, you don't need to. The other way you cannot state your address is if for some reason you are under protected status with the state of Florida. So if that's you, if you've gone through a legal process to have your records made private. Sometimes there's various reasons, but sometimes people end up doing that because of domestic violence situations or things like that. You'll know if that's you, if you have that kind of protected status. Now there is like a third option, and a lot of organizations will make use of this, saying an office address instead of your personal address. Like if you would like to say Catalyst Miami's address, you can feel free. They usually will not challenge you on it, right? Or don't give your apartment number. Yeah, if you live in a building where you cannot give your apartment number, go for it. If it's just a house, maybe you could use Catalyst Miami's office address, or another organization you might be there representing. Feel free to do that. That's kind of a way around it. Because yeah, I realized the same thing years ago. The first time I Googled myself and saw that my address was literally everywhere from speaking at public hearings. And so I was like, including my apartment number. And I was like, great. Okay. Let me not do that next time. So, okay. Hopefully those are some helpful tips. Now, with the time we have left, let's move into actually preparing your remarks. So anatomy of a 2-minute public comment. Some of you have already said some of these points already, right? About making remarks personal, the issue about the address. So you're going to start with name and address. your organization or group, if you are with one, of course, people come just as themselves, and that's totally okay. A personal story addressing the issue that you want to speak about. Why is this connected to you? You know, if you rely on Metro Connect, talk about that. Talk about how it's a part of your day-to-day life and why that, instead of just, you know, stats and figures about how many people it's gonna hurt, which it's, you know, they can hear all those stats and figures, but it's not going to be as memorable as your personal story of why you rely on Metro Connect, right? And then a specific request to the mayor and commissioners, right? What is it? What is the specific demand? It either don't cut something, fund something at a certain level, take funds away from this, right? We're going to talk through some of these, but making sure it's a very specific and actionable request. They should have, if, you know, after the 2 minutes, know exactly what they could do, right, to respond to your demands. And then an optional thank you, you know, there, you don't have to. It doesn't hurt. You know, I think the high schooler that we listened to was a great example. She was very forceful, and she did call out the commissioners, and she also thanked them for listening, right? So I think there's a way that you can do both. That you can be really forceful and also respectful. On to the next slide. So this is a written out like sample of a 2-minute comment. I don't think we need to spend a lot of time here because you both or you all already heard a couple of examples tonight. But essentially, if you read through this, you can see that it follows the pattern that we just talked about, and it can be a good example for you as you're kind of writing your own. I think for the sake of time, we want to make sure we have time for everybody to start writing their own. Let's just breeze through the next couple of slides, and then we'll get to have time for everyone to write theirs. Okay, so yeah, so this breaks down what was just on that previous slide, where, you know, the example here, Maria Gonzalez, she speaks with the Homeowners Neighborhood Association. I will point this out. She said, I am also a member of my Homeowners Neighborhood Association, which represents over 500 families. Why might it be important for her to have that last sentence in there, which represents over 500 families? Why would that be important?
She's not just speaking about her experience, she might be bringing some of the experiences of the family she represents.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a substantial number, right? So she's speaking to a broader constituency. And so if you have that, it's important to reflect that to the commissioners. Okay, next slide.
But also, Rachel, votes, 500 votes can make or break a local election as well. And homeowners tend to vote because they care about tax law and other things. So organized groups, especially groups that have high voter turnout, they're, you know, mentioning that could get the attention of the commissioner.
Yeah, she says she's in Raquel Regalato's district, and if I was Raquel Regalado, when it comes time for campaign season, I bet I'm visiting some of these neighborhood associations and these homeowners groups. I'm probably visiting with them to try to get their votes. So when she mentioned it, one, she's probably familiar with the group. She's probably visited them already during campaign season. And two, if she hasn't, she's perking up when she hears, oh, okay, 500 households. That's something. There are a number of commissioners' elections that have been decided with far fewer votes, and larger elections. We've had state representatives elections decided by 30 votes, you know, and so very true. So the personal story addressing the issue what they want to speak about. In this case, they're talking about the county's energy assistance program for low-income families. So I'll just read out this piece. Last summer, during one of the hottest weeks we've ever experienced, my elderly neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez, was hospitalized for heat exhaustion because she could not afford to run her air conditioner. Many families in our neighborhood are struggling to keep up with rising utility bills as temperatures continue to climb. Without the county's energy assistance program, our most vulnerable residents, seniors, families with young children, and those on fixed incomes, face real and dangerous health risks. As a community member, I have heard from dozens of residents who have had to choose between paying for groceries and keeping their homes cool. No one should have to make that choice in Miami-Dade County. So what do folks notice about the personal story that Maria shares. What do you notice from the text on this slide?
It's not her story.
Mm-hmm. Whose is it?
Her neighbor.
Yeah. And that's okay, right? It doesn't have to be. I think I always say to people, you know, think about you or someone you love, someone you relate to close. Like it's okay to share something that's impacted you. Doesn't always have to be just you and your household, right? We're all impacted by when our loved ones are going through hard times or people that we care about, like her neighbor. Anything else you notice? Real consequences for cutting the essential resources. Yes, that's made very clear. And it's made clear through a story, right? She could have chosen to talk about like what's not here. I mean, and maybe I'll see it on the next couple of slides. Maybe she gets to it. I can't remember, but she doesn't cite how many people enrolled in the program. It's not like X number of people rely on this in Miami-Dade County, or she doesn't say, you know, the exact she says one of the hottest weeks we've ever experienced, but she doesn't belabor it with a bunch of climate science about why it's the hottest on record, right? She tells it in the version in story terms because that's what sticks with people, right? Not so much the facts and figures. And she does it quickly. She told a story here that's very compelling about why the program matters and what are the consequences for cutting it. And it fits on this one slide. It's like 3 sentences, right? So she's prepared to get this in a minute or two. So next slide. Yep, specific request is I urge you to vote in favor of funding the Energy Assistance Program in this year's budget. This could have been more specific with a particular funding amount, but your support will help keep our neighbors safe and healthy during extreme heat. It will show that Miami-Dade County stands with its most vulnerable residents. Thank you for your time and consideration. So like I said, it could have been slightly more specific, but it's clear, right? Fund this particular program. She didn't just get up to say, we got to do something about extreme heat. Next slide. Okay, so this is a template for you all to work off of, if it's helpful to you, to start drafting your own public statement. So first, I want everybody to think about which of these cuts are of greatest concern to you that we've talked about tonight. Like, what are the things that are going to most personally impact you? And with that, I'll turn it back over to Camilo, who's going to lead us through the rest of our practice for tonight.
Well, I mean, I think should we take maybe 10 minutes for people to write their 2-minute comment and then call on volunteers? Volunteer people? Does that sound like a good way to go about this? Just think about the testimonies that we heard. Think about the anatomy of a 2-minute public statement that Rachel just walked us through. And think about, you know, that you can also use the guide that Rachel posted on the chat and look at some of the cuts and look at some of the impact and talking points. There's talking points on the far right column. So why don't we do that? Why don't we take 10 minutes and please write something because we're gonna call on you and then we're gonna time you. We're gonna give you 2 minutes to read your public comment. And then we're going to debrief it, and that'll bring us almost to the end of tonight's session. But let's go ahead and take 10 minutes.
Okay, so we'll be back at 7:38.
7:38.
Sounds good.
5 minutes left. A brave volunteer before I start calling names. Anybody? Anyone? All right. How about we start with the season budget speaker just for inspiration? Anna Ruth, did you put something together?
Oh my God. Not fully,
All
but
right, you can wing the rest. All right, who wants to take time to
okay.
keep time? Who wants to keep time?
Oh God.
Rochelle, can you keep time? 2 minutes?
Yes, give me 1 second. Let me get my phone.
All right.
Oh my God.
All
Hold
right, so
on.
we're gonna do this the same way that she will do it at the county hearings. Because I know she'll be there.
Okay. So you could tell me, all right, I'll press start once you begin
Perfect.
speaking.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Good evening. My name is Anna Ruth Flores, and I live at 9280 Southwest 123rd Court. I am in Commissioner Raquel Regalado's district, and I'm an employee of Catalyst Miami. I'm here today to speak about to speak on the requested $55 million increase to the police budget. Like many of you, I believe that public safety is an essential part to our society. However, how can you say that when they're already currently receiving over $1 billion to fund their entire department? We can't say that we are in favor of safer communities while also cutting multiple programs that help with gun intervention and mental health. And in addition, we're also cutting off $16 million to fund multiple CBOs that are providing essential services to people in need. And then that's where I got up to.
Okay. That was almost a minute.
Yeah. I was like, I have a lot of points to talk about, but that was where I like stopped because I was like, I'm getting too mad at writing this out.
All right, let's go to the debrief slide, the next slide, and let's collectively ask, did she start with her name and address? I think she did.
She did.
Did she deliver her comment within 2 minutes? Well, she didn't finish, but sounded like she was pretty on point, right? Was she clear and to the point? What was she talking about? Anyone?
Yeah, she was talking about the increases to the sheriff's budget and how it's absurd that there's $55 million funding that entire department, yet we're seeing cuts to gun violence prevention programs, mental health, and CBO funding.
Absolutely. Did she have the a personal story that she connected to? I don't recall. Did you? No. Well, we'll give her the benefit of the doubt because she still had a minute left and she didn't get to finish her comment. But did she make the ask? And was it specific?
I didn't get to it, but I
I
was
thought
going
you
to,
no, I thought you did. Didn't you say restore the $16 million that
well, I
you
was going to say something like, now that like CBOs are getting kicked out of the budget, who's to say that next year we're gonna make it back in? Like it's just going to be a never-ending cycle. But obviously I wanted to phrase that in like a nicer calling out way. I just didn't have the time.
That's all right. Well, was her statement morally appealing or fiscally appealing or appealing in any other way? Was she convincing? Tell me about her statement. Amy says yes. Anybody else? I thought it was. I mean, I thought she contrasted, the huge spending on police against, cutting CBOs, which are doing vital work in the community. And, she mentioned a few examples of that. Maybe not strong enough to pro-police people, but I think that for the average person, once you put that kind of money going into the police next to the work that CBOs are doing and cutting the money, basically limiting their ability to affect change in the community, I think that's pretty appealing. Anybody else? Any more comments? Rachel, what did you think?
Well, I was just gonna ask if you did have more time, do you have a way that you're already thinking about how to make it more personal?
Um, Specifically to, I don't know. No, not to the police comment and not to the CBO comment unless I specify. Like we're one of the CBOs that is not gonna get funded for this. But I don't want to do that. So if anything,
Yeah.
I'll focus on eviction diversion and then I can probably tie more housing stories into it.
Your personal story. Yeah. Yeah, we've kind of decided as an organization that we're not going to be uplifting Catalyst Miami getting funding at the hearing. So that's not going to be in there. But yeah, that's a good point. Okay, on to the next.
Yeah. Any volunteers?
Okay, I
Christina?
made something up. I made something up, so I'm just gonna go.
Okay, hold on a second. Richelle, can you time 2 minutes?
Yes.
Okay, so when Christina
Give me
starts
1 second.
speaking.
Give me 1 second. Let me
All right.
reset it.
Okay.
Okay, when you're ready, Christina, once you start speaking, I'll press start.
And then remember to stop her when the 2 minutes are up. You can say your 2 minutes are up. Thank you for speaking. Next
Okay.
speaker, something like that. All right, go ahead, Christina.
Okay, my name is Christina Livingston and I live at 1080 94th Street, Bay Harbor Island, 33154. I reside in the 24th Congressional District and my commissioner is Commissioner Frederica Wilson. I'm here to speak about affordable housing, which concerns me because housing costs are rising rapidly and many of my neighbors and I are struggling to find safe, stable, and affordable options. I want to share a personal experience. I had a friend who grew up locally, recently forced to move farther away because they could no longer afford to stay near their support network. This issue is important to me and my community because preserving diversity and ensuring long-term residents can remain in our neighborhood strengthens our social fabric and keeps our community vibrant. I respectfully urge you to vote in favor of expanding affordable housing initiative, especially those that include down payment assistance and rental support. Your decision will make a real difference for me and other members of the community. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Nice. You have 43 seconds left.
Wonderful. So we know she actually was within the 2 minutes. What else? Did she start with her name and address?
Yeah, great. Unbelievable.
Yeah. That was great.
Okay. What else? What did we notice?
I thought it was very to the point. It wasn't, there was no rambling. It wasn't hard to, I was very easily able to follow what your purpose was. And I liked that you ended with thank you.
That's great. Before we go further, though, I just want to make one comment that while she did deliver she did include her name and address, she went congressional on the commission, and the commission.
Oh,
So
yeah.
we're speaking to the county commission, so we should speak to our county commissioner because we want them to affect change at the county level. We want them to allocate funding through the county budget rather than the federal budget. But that was good. Just let's just make sure that when we're at the county hearing, we're using our county commissioner and our county district. But let's keep going. Was her statement clear and to the point? I thought it was. What was the statement about? What was the issue that she was there to speak about?
Affordable housing, lack
Affordable
thereof.
housing. Did she share a personal story?
Yes.
Was the personal story compelling?
It was to me.
Communities being uprooted, losing the diversity of our communities. Okay. So the story that she provided, did it connect to the issue of housing? Absolutely, yeah, it's an aspect of housing. So she made the ask. Was her statement morally appealing? Was it fiscally appealing? Did it hit the mark?
I
Yeah, I
think,
mean,
oh,
go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think you could Christina can add in like a fact, like like your comment, Christina, is great. You can tailor it to like be for the state or for the county or for congressional, whoever, and all you would need to do is just add in like your request, like at the bottom, and that's why I need you. Well, that's why I'm requesting for you guys to fund this program or X amount for this. But I thought it was great.
Absolutely, yeah. Shabnam says when you have more time to prep, you can add in the specific budgetary amount too. Totally. Okay, who is our next volunteer? Thank you, Christina.
You're welcome.
I could go ahead. It's still,
Michelle.
so someone else is gonna have to time me.
I
But
got you.
okay,
Go ahead.
it's
When
still.
you're ready, let me just start. I'll time you.
My name is Rochelle Vargas, and I live at 13890 Southwest 56th Street, Miami, Florida 33175. I reside in District 10, and my commissioner is Anthony Rodriguez. I'm here to express my concerns about the proposed budget, specifically about the fare hikes to Metro Rail and Metro Bus. I want to start by expressing my gratitude for continuing Metro Rail, bus, and mover services. These forms of transit are lifelines to many of us in Miami-Dade. However, I have deep concerns about the proposed fare hikes. Much of my job takes place in the downtown area, yet I live in Kendall because it is more affordable than living downtown. Because of this, I rely on taking multiple forms of transit to get to my job. This 50-cent fare increase will negatively impact each form of transportation I need to take. Bus to Metro Rail to bus and back. It's not just a one-time 50-cent increase, it's a $3 increase per day for me. Traffic is already awful. If people have the option to drive instead of using transit, your fare hikes will add more cars to our already congested roads. I respectfully urge you to vote against these base fare increases. Your decision will not only impact transit users, but all commuters in Miami-Dade.
Wonderful. Wow. You had 49 seconds left.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for that. I thought that was a really great statement. Did she start with her name and address?
Yeah, I mean that was great. That was my interest too. Hers was far better than mine. That's just good.
Okay, yeah, that was good. Everyone says that's good. Did she deliver her comment within 2 minutes? Yes. Also, she named her commissioner, Anthony Rodriguez, her district. Was her statement clear and to the point? I thought so. Yeah, I see some nodding. Did she include a personal story that connected to the issue? Yes, she did.
Yes.
Very powerful too. And also very relatable, right?
Right.
How many people take the bus and like several forms of transportation? Who was it that was just sharing? Mercedes was sharing that she's going to take what is it, the bus, the freebie, and the Metro Connect to the hearing. And the fact that it's not just 50 cents, but it's going to be $3 per day, that's a lot of money. How much is that a year? That's a lot of money. And she actually made a really good argument that this may cause people to choose to drive over paying the increased hike, the increased rate, right? So that was pretty convincing for me. What else? Any comments? Any more comments? What did we notice? Did she make the ask? What was her ask? Anybody?
It was to not increase the fares because
Exactly, the 50 cents.
it was gonna reduce ridership.
Shabnan says the details in the story were very impactful too. Allows the listener to be in her shoes. 100%, yeah. Yeah, I felt that. I felt the burn of the $3 a day. I felt that. So was her statement morally appealing? I think 100%. What do others think?
Absolutely, so yeah,
Absolutely,
very
yes.
good.
Yeah. Did a great job. Don't worry about stuttering. Extra credit for adding in impacts to people, commissioners who think they won't be affected. 100%. Yeah, traffic being heavier, more cars on the road, more pollution. She connected it to a lot of stuff, not just the fiscal impact, right? Like the economic impact on people, but also commuters, who drive, the environment, indirectly, of course. But I thought it was very appealing. I'll take, I think we're actually coming up to the end. We only have 5 minutes left. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, so for reflections, the next steps, I forgot to put them there, but we're going to include them in the follow-up email. My apologies. I didn't check this. But we have the Miami Your Way meeting coming up on the 20th, and that's going to be dedicated to the budget. We're going to be doing a similar training, and we're going to go deeper into the budget. We're going to go through the tool that Rachel shared earlier, and we're going to help people put together their 2-minute statements. On the 21st, the very next day, Amy, if you want to say a few words, I think Engage has their member assembly, also going to be about the budget. Tell us a little bit more about that, Amy.
That's right. So same as Miami Our Way, we're also going to be prepping folks for the 2-minute comment. So if you have any additional questions, definitely come by and I'll drop in the chat the sign up form for that.
Absolutely. We're also going to have our next Divest Invest meeting next week from 4 to 5. It's a Wednesday and the 20th. Actually, no, that meeting is we're going to have the Miami Your Way. So we're going to invite people to come to Miami Your Way. And then 2 weeks after that, and 2 weeks ongoingly, we're going to have the Divest Invest meetings. And we're going to continue to do budget analysis and generating more talking points and helping people put together their 2-minute public statement. Yeah.
Oh, can I add? The next Divest Invest meeting will be, I believe, the day before the first budget hearing. So it's a
Right.
really good time to join and just like see if there's any like updates or be in the know right before the budget hearing. And also if you want to practice or just want to get others' opinions on your public comment, that's a great space to do that in. So if you're interested, just send me or put your email in the chat and I'll add you to the Google group.
And you can also reply to the email that we send tomorrow, and let us know if you want to join Divest Invest. And this is basically the organizing group that does this type of work. And yeah, Rachel, do you have anything else?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, share these. If maybe you finish tonight and you're like, I'm good, I feel fully prepared, great. But share one of these other options for these other sessions with your friends or family. Because that's really the goal of this program. We want to get as many people prepared as possible. And then also maybe you want to come and help prepare other people. Maybe you'll be the person who's first and gives the example that everyone else follows, right? So, yeah. And please fill out our little feedback form here.
And Amy also said Solidarity Gathering also happening on September 4th on the second floor cafeteria at Government Center. That's wonderful. I had forgotten about that, or maybe I didn't know about it, but thank you, Amy. We'll be sure to include that in the follow-up email. please fill out the feedback form. It really helps us make improvements. Like I said before, we're trying to export this program into the community. We want others to be able to use it and learn from it. And we want to keep improving on it. So it's very important. Please take a picture or just fill out the survey now. It's very short and it will help us a lot. With that, thank you. It's been really amazing. On behalf of myself and the team, of which we have several people here, Shabnam, Amy, John, Rachel, Anna Ruth. We're very thankful, very grateful for you and for joining us on this program. And yeah, it's just the beginning. Anyone else? Any parting words? John, Rachel, Anna Ruth, Amy.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Have a good night,
Indeed.
everyone.
Everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.